let's see. Excuse me. Went down to check the mail. In case you're wondering, no, I don't do the videos on weekend. Well, I will when he goes and checks the mail because he's waiting for the and his friends down there. He made friends with the mail. I may shut his thing off because can't hear me over that. Can't hear me over that. So anyway, I know it's a little dark. Today's discussion. I mean, I know that there's a lot going on in the world. And for those who don't understand me, I'm a soldier's daughter. My father was a soldier most of my life. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about me and, you know, why I feel the way I do. I grew up in a time, and there was a lot of wrong things going on, you know, while I was growing up. Like I said, my father was a soldier, so part of his job, you know, he would be gone for, you know, several months or a year, like during the Vietnam War, which to me was something we shouldn't have been a part of, but I was too young to, you know, now looking back, I understand that we shouldn't have been involved in that, you know. I know that we only went over there to protect the people of South Vietnam, but, you know, because most of them were good people. I mean, you know, there's good and bad in everybody, you know. There's bad communists and good communists. Because our country is, you know, really against communism. We think, you know, we should go and save the world. We can't do that. It was proven during Vietnam. It was proven during Korea. I mean, you know, it's our way of life here is fine. This is what, you know, our founding fathers, and they weren't founding, you know, people were here before the Mayflower, okay? I mean, Europeans came to this country, but there were people already here. And I can't say the actual word now, when it's more appropriate, because, you know, my teeth are kind of gone. But I'll say Native American because it's better than calling them Indians. Okay, you know, they were here when every boat from Europe landed on here. It didn't, you know, it doesn't matter, you know. What matters is, you know, people need to respect the Native Americans a lot better than they should. Because they were suppressed, taken from the land of their ancestors into land that, you know, belonged to other natives' ancestors, where they, you know, had to relearn skills, and then the government decided to pull the kids, make them cut their hair, make them wear clothing for, you know, as the European white people did. And, you know, well, you all know that. Anyway, back to me. So, I am, you know, a descendant of immigrants. One side's been here a lot longer than the other side. I have long believed that everybody should be treated equal. You know, we all have two eyes, two hands, legs, two arms, a heart. We have the same, you know, heart, lungs, all that. Our blood is all red. There's no difference in the color of blood. And when you get a blood transfusion, they don't tell you whether it's from a white person, a black person, native a person, or onward. So I still can't understand why in the 21st century we still got people hating on people here. We should be showing the world we live you know, we're doing better than they think. You know, every friend I ever cherished, no matter what color they were, or what religion they were, or what their beliefs were, because some of them weren't, you know, like into the Wicca religion, and it's a religion, and some of them were Catholic or Christian or Jewish, or, you know, their religion didn't matter to me, you know. Friends are friends, you know. I have people I claim to be best friends that you know, that I've known for years. Some I met through my husband. And I've, you know, always with my son's friends, I've always kind of adopted them in, like if they needed a place to crash for the night, as long as their parents knew it, and they were fine with it, then they could come. But, you know, people don't look past that. Yeah, I'm a recovering drug addict. I'm stopped doing it in '95. So, you know, my child was 5 years, like 5 years old. So, yeah, I know that was the wrong thing to be doing. And, you know, I realize a lot more now than I did then. You know, but that's how I coped with the issues I was dealing with. You know, I'm not going to go into details what those issues were. That's nothing to deal with. The issue, mainly the person that created some of the issues is dead married, so we're fine, you know. But you guys got to think that, you know, we start taking care of each other and make, you know, make friends, you know, and care about them. It's part of being human. I mean, yeah, you know, my spouse and I have problems. You know, they're little bitty problems. They're nothing that can't be solved. You know, we have a difference of opinion. Oh boy, do we. But it's part of grown old. You know, I've been with him for 37 years. You know, I mean, my relationship with him has lasted longer than a lot of marriages. You know, that's because I don't give up so easy. You know, I'm always trying to, you know, keep the peace and stuff like that. I'm one of those that try to keep the peace between everybody. Go figure. But that's just the way it is. I mean, my parents argued, like every normal couple did, you know. My dad was a drinker. He wasn't as bad as, say, my grandfather, who I never got to meet. And I can't judge my grandfather either because, you know, there's reasons why people pick up the bottle and drink. I think with my dad, it had a lot to do with the fact he was a soldier and he saw things that nobody should see. And that might be the reason why he drank. I don't know. He never indulged in the reason why, but it ended up killing him in the long run. Um, yeah, we weren't the perfect family, okay? Let's get this straight. My mother wasn't a perfect mother. My father wasn't a perfect father. I was never a perfect mother. My spouse was not a perfect father either, you know. He's calmed down a lot since we became grandparents. And we're grandparents to more than just one child, so. But, you know, no parent is perfect. They'll make mistakes. They'll make big ones. And I understand that. That's why, you know, I can stand up and admit, yeah, I screwed up a lot. But my son turned out to be pretty good guy. You know, he works his butt off. So does she, you know. They're trying to make a good place for Ava to grow up in. And they're doing the best they can, you know. I think she has a lot of anxiety and the medicine's not working because I know my anxiety is bad, but I try to find something to calm it down before I talk to people. So I kind of can keep mine under wraps. You know, like I said, I didn't grow up in a perfect family. It was considered dysfunctional, you know, because my dad was drinking. My mother put up with a lot. She basically had to raise 4 kids while my dad was off working because, like I said, you know, during wartime, a soldier goes to war. And that's what my father had to do. Not what he was, his duty. You know, whether I agreed to that particular situation or not, and I didn't quite agree with it because a problem with this country, we get into everybody else's business before we get into them. Now, World War II, there was a reason for it. But, like everybody thinks we're gung-ho going into that war. No, it had to take the bombing of Pearl Harbor to do that. But I, I grew up with mostly my mom and my brothers taking care of me and my other brother. There was 4 of us, and my mother had to work too. You know, soldiers don't get paid what you think they get paid. Okay. Yeah, when they live on base, they get free rent and all that, but they still have things they got to pay for too. And if they choose to live outside the base or post, they got to pay their own bills. Military's not going to pay rent outside the military housing. They never did. And not very many people can say they've been to the country of, their mother's father's origins, which was Germany. And that's where I was born. And before you guys say something, let me explain. When a child's born overseas, they're still an American citizen if their parents are American. Okay? It's just that they had to take me when they got back and got it was from the Department of Foreign Affairs. I don't know if it still exists. It might be called something else now. But it was green, and I have it, but it's in the storage. Which I was always told to replace it. It took an act of Congress, so that's probably true. But that's what they have to do. They have to go to that particular department when they bring their children back from when they were born in Europe, so that they can, show proof they're American citizens, and that's what my parents had to do. And they did. So, if any of you see my Facebook, you'll see where it says where I was born. I'm not ashamed of where I was born. I'm not ashamed of being born there. You know, I have ancestors that came from northern part of it. That was part of Prussia at one time. So I'm more Prussian German than I am anything. You know, I'm Prussian German Irish and Slovak Hungarian. It's more Slovak than the Hungarian, by the way. But, you know, I'm proud of being all that. You know, there's a little bit of gypsy in me on my father's side. I'm proud of that. Doesn't mean I believe in everything they do, okay? You know, gypsies in this country are different from the ones in Europe, okay? Or in the United Kingdom. They all but they have the same thing. The men all go out and make money, but you know, it's just, you know, it's a way of life, just like people that come from the Amish. That's their way of life. We may not agree with it, but that's the way they live. You know, if it works for them, it works for them. That's why I said, you know, don't down communism because you don't like it. I'm not a communist. I don't think it's a good idea, but if it works for the country that are, then that works for them. It might not work here, okay? I don't think we should, you know, follow their lead. I think we're fine here, except for, you know, certain things are not put in perspective prior, I mean, let me put it to you, before, that should be taken care of first before, you know, like here, giving money to other countries like the 40 billion to Argentina. I don't quite understand why they needed to do that when that 40 billion could have very well fixed roads and lowered rents and lowered mortgages and, you know, could have helped the poor better instead of having to rely on taxes. That 40 billion could have went into the SNAP program for people that are working or on disability. And don't get me wrong, I didn't raise my kid on welfare all the time, only part of the time. When I could get a job, which I had to wait until after I had a diploma because they weren't going to hire me, you know, without the diploma in the fields I would, you know, needed to be in, you know, things that I could do and I knew I could do. But I did get jobs. I ended up, the last job I had was being an in-home provider, which is a person that, it's like being a nurse except you don't, you clean up after them, you make sure they eat well, you make sure they take their meds, you wash your clothes, that type of thing. Sort of like a maid, I guess you could say. But they're called providers. They tend to take, and they don't get paid what they should for that job, because it's not just that, it's also heart-wrenching, because if you get somebody that's terminally ill and you get close to them, and a lot of providers get close to their you know, people they take care of, and it can be sad when the person that they took care of for all those time, you know, years or so, blah blah blah, whatever, it can get heart-wrenching because it's like losing a member of the family because you're so close to them. So, you know, it's not an easy job to do. And, you know, kudos to anybody that is an in-home care provider. But that's just a little bit about me, you know. I don't mind sharing. I mean, you can ask me questions, I'll answer them truthfully. You know, like I've said often, I don't get paid for doing these videos. The topics are off of my head or what I've read online or, you know, what I've seen. That's just a little bit about me, you know, how I grew up. Like I said, it wasn't a perfect family. You know, we had our problems. I mean, even to this day, we still have problems. I mean, I have a brother that doesn't talk to me at all for his own reasons, and I don't understand why. And, one passed away, and then one's up in Oregon getting up there in years, the oldest one, which, you know, this is hard, you know. So, love everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to me. If you got a question, go ahead. There's comments. I leave the comments open so you can make comments if you want. And there's a subscribe button and a notification, so, I appreciate it if you do. You know, it's not a have to, because like I said, I don't get paid for doing this. This is just something I enjoy doing. I like talking. And I don't have many friends, so, I tend to open up online. Anyway, I hope everybody has a good day. I'll talk to you maybe tomorrow. We'll see. Thanks for watching. Bye.